is, this goes back to that online thing, a question that came up just a minute ago. Because what I did is, when I started using the Smartpen, it was because I was teaching online. And I teach math, and so this was from a college algebra class, and this is just an example. But if you can imagine being a college algebra student taking math online, and you're at home and you ask yourself all of a sudden, I'm stuck on this homework problem, how do I get help? And when I first started teaching online, the way they would get help would be this. They would shoot me an email that says, I'm stuck on number 42. And I would say, great, and I would write out everything I could think to write, and I'd put notes beside it and draw little arrows and tell them. I would scan this and I would email it to them, because typing an email back to them was just useless. So I would do that process, and that was okay, but it didn't do what I needed to do. Many times I would still find that once they received that scanned document, they would call me, and then I'd end up having to talk them through it, because they needed to hear the steps explained. Well, I went to a conference, and I walked in, and they were doing this thing with a Smartpen, and I went, oh my goodness, that's what I need for my online students. And so what I found was this thing was incredibly easy to use, and I want to show you, before I go any further, I want to give you an example of one here so you can hear it and see what my students would see when I responded. So this one's only, I think it's about 2.5 minutes, so I'll play this whole one for you. And hopefully we'll have some volume. It's playing. Do we have volume? It played yesterday.
Is the volume thing?
The volume is up. And you know it played yesterday, Sheila.
Is it busy?
I don't know. I promise I came over yesterday and tested it.
She did.
I did. It worked.
I have no idea. Here comes Jimmy.
There we go. Give me some volume. Well, what this does is, we'll get it going here in a minute, I'm sure. But what we do is, I can write, and with the pen, and literally, I brought my pen with me, and it's really neat because it works just like an ink pen. I even brought my notebooks with me so you could see what I write. You have to use special notebooks with the dot matrix paper, and then here's what you actually do. If I wanted to write a problem out, I would write, and a lot of times, like on this one, I pre-wrote this information here, and then once I pre-wrote that information, because I don't want them to sit and listen to me write, because you hear those little scratching of the pen, so I didn't want them to have to listen to all that, so I was pre-writing all of that. Then there's a little button down here that says record, and I brought notebooks with me, so if you're interested in this, you can look at these when we get done, but you just literally tap the record button. And now the pen is going to not only record the rest of what I write, but the voice to go along with it. And so what your students now hear is, I would read the problem and say, here's what we're going to do, and then I would take them through all of the steps. And so now, instead of just seeing this, they would hear me say, well, I'm going to draw you a picture here, and it's a picture of something that kind of looks like a soda can. And we're going to be finding the volume, and I would talk to them about the area of a circle, which would be the top, and then I would explain, well, we need to multiply that now by the height. And I go through all of that explanation that if you just see the writing, you miss. So that's how I would do it. When I'm finished talking and I have this ready for them, I would simply tap stop. The recording stops. There's a cable that comes with the pen, and it plugs into your USB port. Plug your pen in, uploads to the computer exactly what I have written and what I have said to go along with it. What then happens is it's saved as a PDF file with audio. All I do is then email that to a student, and what they've got is the counterpart to me standing at a board writing and explaining like you would have in the classroom. So much better than just getting written or just hearing me on the phone, which is how I used to do it. So now they get all of that. The other piece of that is once they finished with the, I have emailed it to them, I had a repository of all of my pen casts. I would then upload those into the online class so that any student who had a problem with, a question on problem number 15 from homework 5.5 now knows that not only can he, and before he even emails me, he goes straight to the repository and says, is there a homework tip? That's what I call them. Is there a homework tip there on that problem? And so once he does that, he has access to the same thing. Now, the problem with this is that, and I think Jimmy's gonna talk about this a little bit later, in doing this, obviously accessibility is a huge issue these days, okay? By doing this, there's no closed captioning here or anything like that, but we're gonna be able to do that, I'm hoping, down the road and get those closed captions so that not only can the students who can hear it and see it, but the ones who also need the closed captioning may have access to that as well. What questions do you, I'm a little bit obviously thrown off because it didn't play, but let me see if I can answer questions for you.
Is it your voice that's
Absolutely.
recorded?
It is my voice, and that's a good point because it also lets you know this. There's no editing. If you're a person who's done anything, any kind of videos, you did Camtasia or whatever, you know that if you're talking along, recording. Oh, we have video, we have a
The
voice,
problem
but
we're
no.
looking at is one in which a
Yes.
cylindrical aluminum can.
So this is what the students would
This is
get.
what they get.
H of 7 inches. If the can is to have a volume
Thank you, guys.
of 28 cubic inches, approximate its radius R. And I have gone on here and drawn you a picture so that you can see the picture of the cylinder. It almost looks like a soda can when you look at that. And we know that this measure over here is 7. And what we're asked to find is its radius. So if I had a dot right there in the center, I'm asked to find that measure right there. So the way we do this, first of all, is you need to know the formula for calculating the volume of a cylinder. Well, it's simply to find the area of the circle. And by the way, we'll start with that. So the area of the circle is pi r squared. And then we simply need to multiply that by the height in order to get the volume. So the volume is going to be pi r squared times h, which is our height. And it turns out this time that we know what the volume is. And that's a dead giveaway because when we think about volume, we think about measures that are in cubic units. So this time when we're told that the volume is 28 cubic inches, we know that that's the number that is going to go right in here for that volume. We also know that the can has a height of 7 inches, so that's the number that's going to plug in right here. So let's begin then by putting our numbers in. So we now have 28 is equal to pi r squared times 7. Now we want to solve for r. So let's begin by dividing both sides by 7. When I do that, those will cancel and I will have 4 is equal to pi r squared. Now let me remind you, pi is just a number. And so we can actually find that on our calculator right below the clear button. And so we want to use that version of pi because that will give us a more approximate value. So we'll do 4, and we're going to divide both sides by pi. Once again, on the right side, those will cancel. And when I do 4 divided by pi, I get 1.2732, and I'm going to round to 4 decimal places right there, and that's equal to r squared. So r is equal to, and we're going to use the square root button on our calculator to get 1.13, and I think we're rounding to tenths. To hundredths when we do this one. So there's our answer, and we now know the radius of our can. I hope this helps, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, bye-bye.
Now, if you're a student who is struggling on that problem, how would you like to just get a piece of paper where I've written to you, or would you really want to hear the explanation? And it is daylight and dark in how the students perceive this kind of help. Once you have created your pen casts, now I started to say there is no editing here. So if you're used to doing Camtasia videos, I did a ton of those, and you know that if your phone rings or the dog barks or you sneeze or whatever, you can always just edit that out and go on. With this, there is no editing, but what I really do with these, if I'm doing a lecture for those students, I still use Camtasia. and I still do a full-blown video lecture, you know, that goes through all the details. But for those quick and dirty questions, where I want to get an answer to them as soon as I can. If a student sends me a question and I'm sitting in the office, if I get that question from them, I can grab the pen, write this thing out, send it to them in a just attachment to an email. They can have an answer in 10 minutes that is that good. And then, like I say, post it for everybody else to have access to. And that's a ton of information particularly for an online student. What I then learned was anything that worked for my online student, I could also use for my online classes. I posted them for them as well. Do I have any other questions?
How big is the file?
You know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know the answers. Those are the technical questions. Here's what I do know. When I create it and I say save it as a PDF with audio, it saves it. I email it. I have never had an issue with anything being too big, and I have never had a student who could not play it. All they need is a W reader. If they have a W reader on there, and it's free download for that, so as long as they have a W reader. And so I'm sure there are a lot of technical things that I don't know, they're behind the scenes to me, but they've never become an issue. My pencasts are usually not more than, this one's I think 2.5 minutes, they're usually not more than 3 or 4 minutes is a long one. You're doing just quick and dirty stuff with this that you want to get to them very quickly.
3 questions. You have very nice penmanship.
Thank you.
Does it do anything with chicken scratch or?
You get what you see, okay? You get what you see. But let me also say this, and I didn't bring this in today because it's not primarily how I use it, but there are ways. If you had this, the problem typed out ahead of time, you can actually scan that, put it onto the dot matrix paper, and then your writing would actually be on top of that. And so there are ways to not have so much handwriting, and you can do that. A little bit more involved, they have videos that teach you how to do that as well. From the time I opened the box and plugged it in, I had to load a LiveScribe desktop onto my computer. Came with it, all you gotta do is load that. I literally got the pen out, got the notebooks out, special notebooks. I started writing and talking. I stopped and I just want to test this and see how this works is what I did, honestly. Plugged it in. Within 10 minutes of the time I opened the box, I had a pencast done. It took me 10 hours to figure out how to get the Camtasia box open. That was a whole lot more involved than what this was. So it works well. It has a purpose, and for me that purpose is, like I say, something to get to a student very quickly, something that gives them both the audio and the video for them to see.
I just wanted to say, because you mentioned accessibility, one thing I want to point out, we definitely want people to use different technologies and get things to people quickly. Keep in mind, if you're going to use it where you're just answering someone's question, individually you don't have to worry about captioning, you don't have to worry about any of that. You know for a fact that someone doesn't have a hearing impairment, and if you did, you're obviously not going to share an audio file with them anyway. Do this quickly and send it to them, and you don't have to worry about captioning at all. It's when you're posting it for everyone to see, or the whole class to see, that's when you have to worry about whether it's captioned and things like that. So I want to point that out.
Yes.
Because you keep saying it's a wonderful way to get back to people quickly, and that's
And
fantastic.
it still is, yes.
And you can do that, and you don't have to worry about captioning.
Right.
On an individual basis, you don't have to worry about it.
Right. And like I say, that works well. The only part that would keep me from doing is where I have said I have a repository of them and I keep adding to that, then that's going to be problematic.
Right.
So, another question?
In the communicator, there was Stony Brooks over in CIS reported something similar.
Okay. I don't know. I can tell you this, I've had mine for, 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And used it successfully, but it was just, maybe $150, probably even less.
Okay.
You buy them on sale, whatever, so not a big expenditure, worked pretty well. And one more.
I had a student, I see the notebook now, that must be what he had, and he would just record me.
Yes, and so
As he's
students do
writing.
that, absolutely. They can pick up a notebook, they've got their pen, they hit record, you start talking, they're taking their notes.
Yes.
And they hear you talking in the background.
Yes.
So yeah, absolutely. There are students who like to do that, so. Okay.
Do you know if publishers are providing anything with textbooks that would be similar to this?
I have not encountered this anywhere, but like I say, I'm not the end-all authority on that, but I have not encountered that.
And do you know, is closed captioning the only issue if you want to require your entire
I
class?
actually did some bad stuff here. Okay, I'll let you nail me here if you want to. But remember a minute ago when I said something like this? Well, this is our cubic inches. So we're gonna take this number and we're gonna plug it in here. The minute I said things like, take this number and plug it in here. If I had said, let's take this 28 and plug it in for V, now I'm covered. But you've got to be, am I doing okay?
Yeah.
And the same thing here with the 7. You know, I drew the arrow, I show them, but this was one that I created before I had attended the training sessions on that, and I sat there in that training session and went, doggone, got a lot of those I'm gonna have to redo. But, you know, things like that. So it's not just, it's how you say it as well as the closed captioning. All right, did I nail that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay. I was a good student of that training, okay, I promise. And I think I'm done. If you have any more questions, I'll be hanging around, so if I can help you out with anything else, I'll be glad to.
Thanks a lot.